What does it take to turn a fragile idea in a lab into a life changing drug in the real world? Welcome to Industry Ignited, the podcast where we explore the leaders, decisions, and innovations shaping the future of industry. I'm your host, Dr. Leeanne Aguilar, and today I'm joined by Robert Poe, President and CEO of Olon USA. Rob, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let's dive in. You've gone from combat medic to maintenance guy in a lab to president and CEO. When you look back, what are the key twists in that path that most shaped who you are as a leader today?
Oh, that's a really interesting question because I've led a very full life. I think one of the most important things was having mentors in the business or in general, even outside of the professional setting, that just gave you a chance, gave you an opportunity to learn, and allowed you to fail. I mean, we learn as much from our failures as we do from our successes. And I think, especially early on, and now that I'm one of the older people in business, it's kind of our responsibility to give back to the younger generations and provide them with some training and guidance on how to succeed through business and life. So it's a lot of fun, and it's very rewarding to see young people grow up and succeed just like you did in your own career.
Yeah. And you brought up I think a good point there that I've heard a lot. A lot of people say that uh, you learn a lot from your failures. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's like, how do you embrace failure though? I mean, because that's a hard thing. Nobody wants to fail. It doesn't
Well,
feel good to fail.
yeah, well, my dad, who was a truck driver, used to always tell me, make a decision, even if it's the wrong one. And even if you make an incorrect decision, you can take a course correction. I read somewhere once that the roadways of the world are littered with the dead bodies of squirrels who couldn't make up their mind.
Right.
And there's something to that. It's like if you start down, a lot of times when you're trying to make a decision, you don't have all of the information, so you're trying to go with as much information as you can have at the time, and you go a direction. If you find out that that's not the right way, then you pivot and you go in the other direction. Versus paralysis by analysis, where you're just stuck
Yeah.
trying to do something. I think that's more frustrating than making a wrong decision and
Yeah.
then course correcting.
Well, that's true. And if you're paralyzed by not being able to make a decision, you're wasting a lot of time and
And when you're in a leadership role, it's not just your time; it's the time of your entire team who's sitting there waiting for you to make a decision.
true.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
good point. Now, you started out leaning toward chemistry and facilities management, then shifted into business and leadership roles. What made you realize you were more energized by leading teams and strategy than working at the bench?
So I grew up at. I was very fortunate. My parents got me involved in Boy Scouts, now Scouting America, very early, and so most of my leadership training took place in that environment, and I learned to lead small groups, and I really like problem solving and working with the dynamics of people and finding the right people in the right position at the right time so that you can accomplish a task or accomplish your mission. And so I think as I was taking some of these chemistry courses, like, this is interesting, but this isn't what I want to do forever. And so I took a couple of management courses, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool, and then kind of shifted that way.
Right. Okay. So just kind of trial and error there too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's true. I mean, oftentimes, I found myself in that situation as a young adult going into college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I think,
Yeah,
I changed my major a couple of times before finally just sticking with something and graduating. And
yep.
then, yeah, but yeah, life twists and turns and you never
It
know.
it it, it totally does.
Now, I know you say you come from humble beginnings. Your mom was in public health, and as you mentioned, your dad drove trucks. How has that background influenced the way you treat people and make decisions in the C suite?
Well, I think one of the things that really did for me growing up and becoming an adult was, one, live by the golden rule. Treat other people how you would want to be treated, with respect. I mean, everybody in an organization is important and has their role, whether it's the cleaning staff mopping the floors and emptying the trash cans, or me sitting in my office making decisions and reviewing spreadsheets. Everybody in between those positions has their niche and their role that the organization couldn't function without, or at least not well. I think one of the highest compliments that was paid to me fairly early on in this role because I believe a lot in management by walk around. I like to get out and walk and see people and talk with them and check in and see how things are going. And one of them one day said, "Well, Rob, I think if you ran into me at the grocery store, you would recognize me." And that really kind of struck me because I'm like, well, our site's only around 125 people. Why would that be an issue? So I looked at him and I said, "So are you saying that other people that have been in this role wouldn't?" And they're like, "Oh no,
Hmm.
they spent more of their time in their office, and not getting out and getting to know the people." I'm like, it's hard to lead when you don't know the people that you're
Right.
leading,
Yeah.
and know what their goals and their concerns are. And early on in this role, one of my first things I did was going, okay, what's working, what's not working, what are you upset about? And for me, we're doing all this chemistry and things, and all of this fantastic stuff. The thing people were most upset about was a lot of the parking lot lights weren't working right, and it was winter time, and they were walking after their cars in the dark. So we spent a small amount of money, had them all converted over to LEDs, and everybody was happy.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's like that never would have been the number one thing I picked coming in as being a concern.
Right.
But without getting out and talking to people and understanding their concerns, it's hard to really run an organization.
Right. Yeah, but that really makes you think. I mean, people want to be acknowledged, and the fact that he brought that up, I mean, it shows that he's thinking about it.
Oh,
That he,
there was multiple people that brought that up. That's
yeah,
why I found it interesting. I'm like, okay, so have you guys? This hasn't been fixed. Okay, well, let's fix it.
right, exactly. And it's
Yeah,
like small things a lot of times, like you
right.
mentioned, but they do cause discomfort or interfere in
Yeah,
you know your work experience, which impacts productivity and just
absolutely.
overall
And just a morale thing.
morale.
People want to be heard.
Yeah.
And one of the things I repeatedly tell people is, if you see a problem, see something, say something. If you come to me and say, "Hey, this is a problem," if you recognize it as a problem, I expect you to have, conversely, suggested solutions, or come and say, "Hey, here's a problem. I don't know what to do about it, and I need help."
Hmm.
And then we can look at it, and we may not be able to fix it right then. I mean, budget. I mean, budget, timing, whatever. But don't take that as a no. If it's something that you think is important, the important part of that loop is and I instill in my leadership team is that closed loop
Hmm.
is, okay, get back to them and say, okay, we can't do something at this time because of these reasons, bring it back up in a few months, or, this is the action we're going to take, versus just those suggestions or concerns going into a black hole and never getting feedback on them. Is
Right.
critical, in my opinion, on understanding employee concerns.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just like you said, their concerns don't just go unheard and go into that black
Yeah,
void of, nothing ever happens, but you actually make a plan and act on it. Then they feel
yes,
acknowledged, right? And
exactly.
uh-huh. Now, you mentioned Boy Scouts before. I know you were a or an Eagle Scout and you're still active on the council. What leadership lessons from scouting show up most often in how you run Olon USA?
So many. I've often been asked about some of the most valuable things I learned in scouting, and one of them I think was learning to, well, developing that sense of resourcefulness, looking at what your assets are, not only in things and supplies, but in people, and then employing everything in problem solving or accomplishing a task. And we would do crazy stuff in scouts, like, oh, let's build a tower out of all these sticks and some rope, and so you gotta know the knots and all these things, or hey, so and so is really good with the saw, he can saw, and everybody else can, and we would do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, when you get into business, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, you have to understand what your people's strengths are, so that when a situation comes up, you can go to them and say, "Hey, we've got this thing going on. I know you've got some background in this, even if it's unrelated to their current role. Can you help us out, figure out what to do here?"
Hmm.
And so I think that's one of the biggest things I learned, was just being able to understand the people, what they bring to the table, and understanding outside resources as well. Understanding what you have available and keeping that list kind of your LinkedIn of resources, and not pigeonholing yourself to one of the, that kind of brings me, one of the best advice I got early on was that a lot of people fall into the trap of only networking with people in their industry.
Oh, yeah.
And so as they grow as a leader and they need somebody in that has marketing help, but if you're only networked with science people, how do you find somebody to help you with marketing?
Right.
Because you don't have any contacts. So as you go to events and shows and things like that, network with a broad group of people that you identify with on a personal level or connect with, so you have that broader base. It's the same concept. It's
Yeah.
just building that expansive toolbox that you have to draw on and be able to quickly solve or move forward on a problem or issue.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good advice. Yeah, good feedback to network with those not only in your industry, but outside of your industry. So you broaden your base of resources and expand your knowledge and understanding of things outside of that just closed, loop of, or group of people.
Yeah, you need to expand to other ponds, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. Now, for listeners who aren't deep in pharma, how do you explain what Olon USA does in the drug development ecosystem, especially around API and drug product manufacturing?
And this is something I love I love talking about. So we do a lot of work with like kids science camps and things like that. So we'll sit down with them and explain. So essentially what we do. So when you take a medication, it's whether it's a pill, an injectable, a nasal inhaler, a patch, something. There's a number of things that are in that. You have your excipients that build up, and you might have buffers to help it, settle on your stomach, coatings and things like that. The part we make is the actual drug part. For instance, if you're taking ibuprofen, there's a small amount of ibuprofen in that capsule or tablet that you're taking. What we do is early development of that. So you have to develop that through a synthetic chemical process. I think about it like using Lego blocks, but we're using chemical reactions to get this molecule and this molecule, and then we add stuff to get another molecule to get to that molecule on a cost effective and safe basis. So that process chemistry, someone can come to us with an idea, or they've right post medchem. Medicinal chemistry is a whole interesting field because you might take cancer cells for lung cancer, if that's what you're going after, and put them on little plates like you look under a microscope on. They dose that with different variations of the molecule and see if anything has an effect. If it has an effect on those cells under the microscope, then you say, okay, well this could be a drug candidate. So then you test it in maybe a mouse model or a rat model and see if it actually has some biological effect. So once they've identified that target, we can then take it from there and then scale it up through their preclinical studies, their toxicology, their phase one clinical trials, phase two, phase three, and then all the way to commercial production if the drug makes it that far. Um, it's it's interesting because there's a really high failure rate between that targeting
Hmm.
um, and the preclinical studies. You're going from maybe 5,000 drugs to 200 that make it that far, and then from you know the preclinical studies to phase one, out of those 200, maybe two drugs will make it. So you have about a 98%, 98, 99% failure rate just in that early development phase.
Okay, wow. So you're developing the chemistry for the
So yeah,
drugs.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so we're developing the chemistry to build the molecules for the drugs,
Okay, interesting.
and then doing the manufacturing.
And then the manufacturing as well.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
Yes.
So your clients, they're coming to you with the ideas. They're coming to you with the
Yeah.
basics of it, and
So
then
they
you're
might they might they might be a drug company. It might be two guys from a hospital that think they have an idea that this drug might work. Could be, a group of researchers out of academia. We work with all different types of clients and sizes.
okay. And what about as far as like different indications for the drugs? Like how are
Yeah,
you
for us, we're fairly ambivalent on what it's going to be used for in the end because we're doing the chemistry piece.
okay.
But this past year on the commercial side, we had a drug approved for treating Parkinson's disease, and one that's approved and on the market now for one of our clients that's for presbyopia, which is as you get older, your eyesight starts to get worse. You can take an eye drop now, and it improves your near vision for 8 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
So we get to work on some really cool things that we're fairly indication and drug product formulation ambivalent to,
Okay.
because we're making the piece that goes into that.
Got
The
it.
whole drug, the whole formulations drug product is a whole nother area that is fascinating, because how do you take a drug that's not very soluble and get it into something so that it gets absorbed into the body is a whole other area of study.
Yeah. I know, fascinating. A lot of directions we can go and
Oh,
a lot of conversations.
yeah, I mean, when you talk about healthcare and research and things, one of my passions is working with young people on, you go into a school and they talk about, oh, I want to work in healthcare, and you're like, oh, what does that mean? I mean, usually they're thinking like nurse or doctor or
Right.
something like that. And you're like, oh, well, have you considered research or drug research or chemistry or all these different
Yeah.
things that can go into it, and they just don't have the world knowledge to even consider those. Or somebody
Yeah.
like me, who I love the science. The
Right.
science interests me. I don't do the science. I provide the support and the decisions and the leadership for those that are really good at the science to be able to succeed with those programs.
Right. Yeah, no, that's amazing. So, like you mentioned, so you're really just helping companies raise their baby. You take the early molecule, help it
Yeah,
grow into a real
and
drug,
and
and
that's exactly how I explain it to my team. Is when somebody brings you an early process when they were making really teeny tiny amounts, it's really easy to be judgmental on, oh, that's not a very good way to do that, but it served their purpose. And
right,
and so what they are coming to, and this may be their life's work. They may have invested their life savings into trying to develop this molecule because maybe Aunt Cindy has this disease or something, and they want to find a treatment for it, or one
hmm
of their children, or they just have an interest in helping the general population. And so, you know, instead of saying that's a bad process, working on, hey, that was appropriate for what you were doing. We're gonna have to make significant changes to get it to scale up, because as
hmm
you go with larger and larger chemical reactions, things can change. For instance, if you're generating a significant amount of heat in something really small, that's not a big deal. When you're in a 5,000 liter reactor generating a lot of heat, that can be a safety issue.
right.
So our chemists are really good about identifying the reactions and monitoring them and changing them as they go up to maintain that safety for our personnel, as well as trying to avoid creating impurities that we don't want to go into the human body.
hmm So, as far as your process, what does it look like day to day when you're working with small and medium-sized pharma clients?
Oh, that's no 2 days are ever alike, that's for sure. Yeah, and it's interesting because we work with quite a number of clients. We always have probably 15 to 20 different drugs we're working on in various stages. Mostly because some of them may get to here and they either run out of funding and drop off, or they didn't pass their toxicology, and so again, you know one or two out of the 200 that go into preclinical will make it to phase one. So it's always new things coming up, new issues. I always try and tell people, this is research, it's science. Things are going to go wrong, but it's how we respond to it that makes the difference.
Right. Okay, so they'll come to you with these ideas for molecules, and you just said, I mean, only a handful will ultimately work out. Like, how do you know, if you should keep going or if it's time to call it quits on a particular?
Well, that's the billion-dollar question there, because I mean, it takes the latest studies I've read from concept to commercial. A lot of drugs now are being repurposed, so they were developed for one thing, but they found out it's effective for another. So for a new chemical entity, or new molecular entity, they call them now as well, it can take anywhere from 300 million to $2 billion to get it from concept to market, and can take 5 to 10 years.
Wow, yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunity for failure in there for various reasons. And a lot of drugs, they fail in toxicology because you just can't get rid of the impurities that cause cancer, or that cause other indications. Sometimes you'll get into, the human model from the animal models, and they just don't metabolize the way you expected them to, or they settle into a different organ than what they did in the animal models. So there's a lot of ways a drug can fail in the development program. The FDA used to have a really interesting kind of choose your own adventure game on their website. I wish they would bring back,
Really?
where it was like, okay, you've gotten here, pick this, and you get there, oh, your drug failed, on this, go back and restart it, and it was really really nice to do.
Yeah, yeah. And like we were mentioning failure before, like with so much failure that you're dealing with, how do you help keep your team stay motivated and connected to the patient and the impact behind the chemistry?
Well, I think, I mean, it's nice to have enough programs that we have some successes, and to celebrate those successes, and that we're getting drugs out there into patients that are doing them some good. I've not had the experience since I've joined Olon, but previously in my career, we had one company that brought around a cancer patient that to meet our team, and was telling us, hey, listen, I was given like a year to live
Wow.
5 years ago. So I've gotten to spend, 5 more years with my family and my kids and my grandkids, and that really hits home. And
Yeah.
so when we bring in a new program, chemistry can just be chemistry, or it can be chemistry with a purpose. I mean, everything's chemistry. Everything's made of chemicals. You,
Sure.
me, the computers we're talking to each other on, it's all chemistry. But, trying to hone in on, okay, this is the problem we're trying to solve. There's this disease that may have a treatment for it, but we're trying to do something that's better, safer, and has fewer side effects.
Mhm.
Or they're targeting this because there is no treatment for this disease, or it's a small patient population. The orphan drug thing is a whole fascinating area where you may have 100,000 people in the world that have this condition, and so you're trying to get something produced so that those people can live a healthier life.
Yeah. Right. No, I like that though, that I mean, staying connected to patients by actually having patients come in, by, seeing the results of the work because yeah, I would think on a day-to-day basis, you're not always really present to the final
Right. And
outcome.
and I tell people I have a daily medication that I take that I worked on early in my career.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, there's that too. I mean, we hope that none of our family members or loved ones need to take something, but we want it to be out there and available if they need it.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, just bringing that kind of personal level to what we do.
Yeah. No, that's good. Now, you've said there are two kinds of contractors, those who just do what they're told and those who help solve the problem. How do you position Olon USA as the second type, the expert guide rather than the commodity vendor?
Sure. Well, I think anybody that's ever hired a contractor of any sort can understand that. People will come in, they'll write you a bid, and you're like, okay, well, I need you to do this and that. You want them to be the expert, because otherwise you'd do it yourself. And that's how we try to position ourselves. Our site has been in the pharma business since 1986, the company since the early 70s. So when you're coming to us, we're not just going to do exactly what you tell us to do and only what you tell us to do. Again, it's research, it's science. Things are going to start, you know, we see a trend of something that might be headed towards not working. We're going to stop. We're going to look at it, say, okay, this is what we think's going on, and then have a conversation with the client and say, okay, this is what we think's going on, this is what we think should do about it, and then fix it.
Mhm.
Um, Versus just calling up and saying, "Well, that didn't work. What do you want us to do now?"
Yeah. Right.
And leaving it totally on them, because we've seen a lot of different things, a lot of different situations, and sometimes just by going back to the customer, they're like, "Oh, we saw that in the preclinical things, and we did this."
Mm.
And so sometimes just having that conversation, um, it becomes a non-issue real quick. But the last thing you want to do is see something failing and then just continue down the same path.
Right. Okay, so you're coming to them, you're presenting options is what I'm hearing, and
Yes.
then with that, I mean, communication, there might be other possibilities that open up that
Yeah, absolutely. They might have an idea, or they might say, we saw that, we tried that, that didn't work. Let's try this.
Mhm, right. Yeah, because back to the brutal reality that,
Yeah, and
you
and and and
know
and truly being a partner and a collaborator,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
versus just just a fry cook. we want to be the chef, helping them design the menu and put out the good work.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure your clients are aware, I mean, going into it, of the high, failure rate and the risks involved. So how does that, the high failure rate shape the way you think about risk, funding, and resilience, and how you communicate with clients in the industry?
That's the one where there's a lot of back and forth and give and take because especially like right now, there's not a lot of investment in the United States in early development, especially in small molecules. A lot of money is getting thrown at AI and large molecule development and things that are considered to be a little bit more sexy, even though if you look at the over the last 5 to 10 years, most of the drugs approved by the FDA were small molecules. So it's a really interesting dynamic, which even in the last couple of years has really shifted. Big pharma now doesn't do a lot of their own development. They go buy companies. A lot of our companies that we work with, their business model is based on getting their drug to phase 2 and having big pharma
Acquire them. Yeah.
acquire them.
Uh-huh.
And then they'll take that money and go find something else to, some other new drug to work on.
Right.
We've got several, at one point we had one of our customers bought 4 to 5 of our other customers,
Wow.
and it's just fascinating how that works. And it's really interesting because there's not, especially preclinical, there's not a lot of private investment. There's not a lot of investors that are willing to risk on a 2% chance of making it. And so that's why, public funding through NIH and grant funding is really, really important in the early development
Right.
work.
Yeah. Now, I know there's been a lot of conversation around reshoring critical drug manufacturing to the US. What role do you see Olon USA playing in that effort, especially with your available capacity and expansion potential in Ohio?
Sure, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart right now because we actually are talking with several companies and building out some additional capacity through investment right now. We're spending about $11 million to put in some larger capacity reactors and into one of our bays to help support one of these customers that's from Europe and has agreed with the current administration to make their API and their drug product in the United States to help protect the U.S. supply chain. And even before the current administration, this process started. A lot of it stemmed from COVID when there were drug shortages because you couldn't ship, you just couldn't get the things into the U.S. They realized how much of our API and drug product was manufactured outside the United States.
Hmm.
So in order to help prevent that kind of thing from happening or having a foreign government, that's upset with us or doesn't like something we're doing say no, I'm not gonna sell you that drug and weaponizing the healthcare system. It is a good idea to bring more of our manufacturing of drugs back into the United States. Unfortunately, because of our labor costs and liabilities and things like that, that does come at an increased cost for some of the companies,
Right.
but it's doable. And like I said, we're actively working with one customer right now to make that happen. And we do have some expansion room to bring in some other customers that need space, and we can build out and do some of their commercial manufacturing for them, or they can have their own space on our campus.
Yeah. Now I mean, there's competition from China and India, I mean, which is intense, I know, and especially on cost. So where do you believe like US-based sites such as yours can really differentiate beyond just price?
Well, that's interesting because, and I get it, especially in the early phase where there is a high failure rate. A lot of customers will spend their money in some of the ex-US, especially Asia, where it's like, okay, if I may lose money, I'm going to lose as little as possible. The problem they get is when they decide okay, we're going to move into phase 1. We want to bring that back to the United States and get the process here because we want it to say made in the USA or made in America as we go into our clinical trials in the US for FDA approval. Is a lot of those processes, I don't want to say they're bad, but they use column purifications to get rid of a lot of the impurities. Well, when you do that, you lose about half your yield.
Oh, wow.
40 to 60% of your yield could be gone. So that can get, as you're scaling up, can get really, really expensive if you're losing that much of your product as you're just trying to purify out some impurities. So we'll have to go and kind of rework the process and optimize it in order to eliminate that column purification. So over the longer run, I think it offsets a lot of those costs, because you're having to do a lot of rework.
Yeah.
But I imagine, if you just do a cost analysis of, 50 programs and or 200 programs and one of them makes it, well, then only that one cost more. So it offsets the rework that you have to do on that one. But it does add a little bit of time and cost to the development process for that because you want to do that rework for the scale up.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you suggested some creative ideas around how NIH funding and public support for early stage research could be structured
Yes. I
differently.
have a lot of opinions on this.
So, what would
My
you change and why?
My my favorite one is I mean, as we've established with the high failure rate, there is an important aspect to having grant funding for the early development, and we as a people don't want to stifle R&D. We want better drugs as our population ages, especially, and the
Right.
US population is aging. We want better drugs out there to help keep us healthy. And so from my point is, instead of just giving the money away and not expecting anything in return, if your drug used, public money in order to do this early work, then when it goes commercial, a small percentage of that should go back into the fund
Hmm.
and help create this feedback cycle. Again, it doesn't have to be much, but that would fund further research without any kind of increased tax burden on the US population, which is what people seem to be upset about.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, if it's not taxed, like, where would the money come from?
That's a good question. What I've been seeing is kind of now that with the NIH freezes earlier this year and some of the proposed cuts moving forward, there seems to be a lot of family offices that are stepping in to not fully fill the gap of funding. But again, maybe someone in their family has a disease. I worked with a company a number of years ago where the son was cystic fibrosis, and
Yeah.
so this family took a significant amount of their family wealth and put it into a foundation to go out and find treatments for cystic fibrosis because someone in their family was afflicted with it. And so you're seeing a little bit more of that kind of investment from some of these high net worth individuals or family investment offices where because they have someone, they're providing some non-dilutive funding to some of these companies just to help kind of kickstart them in the right direction.
Yeah. Wow. Now, I know you're known for creating a culture of excitement, positive attitudes, and inspiration. In a highly regulated, high stakes environment like pharma manufacturing, how do you keep that energy alive without compromising discipline and quality?
We do a lot of kind of company gathering events. Again, the people are really, really important to me. And so even small things like in August, we had an ice cream truck come park in the parking lot and had, you know, the people come out, take a half an hour and have some ice cream and visit with each other and break down those silos, get people out of the lab just to enjoy the weather and see each other. When we were very fortunate when the last total eclipse happened last year, we were right in the pathway of totality.
Oh, wow. Cool. Very cool.
And so one of our operators, his wife has a food trailer, and so we brought the food trailer out and threw out some chairs and fed everybody and just turned it into an event. And people really enjoy that kind of thing and getting to know each other. People from different departments talk about the work they're doing and the things they're working on, or they talk, about their separate their outside interests and really just kind of a little bit of social time that gets people together and allows them to really thrive.
Yeah. Yeah, just bringing the team together and I guess eating and doing activities outside of just work. that,
Yes.
yeah, that cultivate
Come on.
that, yeah, relationships and yeah. And I know outside of work, you're also an outdoorsman, yogi, and active in scouting and youth programs.
Yes.
How do those parts of your life influence the way you think about stress, balance, and long term leadership?
Well, there's nothing better than stress for stress than getting out and getting some green space and forest bathing and getting out in the woods. So have always enjoyed camping. My wife is not a traditional camper, so we actually bought a little vintage camper that we go places, and I sleep in a tent and she sleeps in the camper with running water, and it works out well. But just getting outside and being in nature. I do meditate every day. I do yoga mostly because I'm older now and was hard on my body when I was younger. And so in order to operate on a normal basis, be able to get a good stretch and breathe in.
Yeah,
But
flexibility.
it's important to remain active. I mean, you can sit in front of a computer all day long, and then you have trouble standing up at the end of the day. And leading that sedentary lifestyle is it's a really easy trap to fall into. So just
Right.
getting out, and when we moved to Ohio here, we bought some acreage, and so getting out and working on the land, and we're building some trails, and we've got an old pond we're rehabbing, and just doing that kind of stuff is it's great from a physical aspect as well as a mental health.
Right.
Just being out there and doing something and accomplishing things while you're unplugged. You're not in
Yeah.
front of a computer. You're not on your phone. You're not, doing those kind of things.
All right. Yeah. So just, taking time to escape from the pressures and the burdens of work
Absolutely,
to
absolutely
recenter.
necessary.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely necessary.
Yeah. No, I like that. Right. Just to recenter, get some nature balance and de-stress. Yeah, those are really good ideas. I mean, I've been going for long walks. I try to get several
Absolutely.
several long walks in every
Yeah.
week and just yeah, like you said, just being with nature, breathing fresh air, getting out from in front of the computer and just to
Yes.
get your mind off things, right?
Yeah. All those things are great.
Yeah, yeah. Now, for young leaders or scientists and entrepreneurs stepping into their first management roles, what advice would you give about staying people centered while driving performance in a complex technical industry?
Oh yeah. Again, I have to take it back to get to know your people. Understand what their interests are. Start having, once you see that they're good at what they're doing, okay, talk with them about, okay, what's next. When you identify those that have some ambition, and they want to go to, I mean, and don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with somebody that wants to come in, do their chemistry all day long, go home at night, and that's it. Um, we need those people. Those are the workhorses of an organization. But if you find somebody that says, "Oh, I'm kind of interested in this management thing," or I want to lead a team, then you start to talk with them about, okay, what that really means, because everybody wants to be the boss until you're the boss and have to make some hard decisions. When you have to pivot the business and possibly lay people off because they don't have the right skill sets for where you're going, or funding is tight, or you're in a down market and have to do a reduction force. Nobody likes that, but that's the reality of being in a leadership role,
Right.
as well as celebrating the successes. It's easy to lead when your business is being wildly successful. It gets a little bit more tough when the rubber hits the road. But being able to start working with them on a career plan to say, okay, these are the things you need to learn to get where you want to be. And this is kind of what we think that timeline looks like, and start helping them, career plan, and give them advice on, and mentoring them some on, and giving them introductions into different ways of doing things and thinking about things, so that they are more well-rounded. And then when those opportunities open up, you know,
Right.
you can let them step in and do like my mentors did. You give them opportunities to succeed and opportunities to fail, and they'll learn from both. And you just make sure it's not, if they are going to fail, it's not something that's going to cost the company $1 million. It's a failure on something that in the grand scheme of things can be absorbed, and then you course correct and move on. So trying to set people up for as much success as you can.
Yeah. Now, do you think leaders are born or can you take someone who, you
Oh,
know,
that's
yeah,
that's the age old question.
right. What's your experience? What's your
Um,
take on it?
I think both. I've seen both. I've seen people that learn through training and become excellent leaders. I've seen people that have never had a leadership training in their life, and they're also excellent leaders. I've also seen people that have had a lot of leadership training and are not so great leaders.
Yeah.
and but you learn from those as well. You learn, okay, when I get to that level, I don't want to do things that way.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a really difficult question. I think there has to be some innate ability to adapt and change quickly. I think that's critical, the ability to be flexible and go in the direction that's needed. But it's yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
the,
And I
the chicken
think,
or the egg
yeah,
story.
chicken,
Yeah.
but also a desire, I think, too. I mean, even if a person isn't,
Yes.
maybe a born leader, but they really want to learn how to lead and they're willing to learn and put themselves out there and
Hundred,
figure it
yeah,
out.
100% agree. And even if it's a reluctant leader, sometimes it's just they need those little successes in order to say, okay, I can do this. I do know what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah. Right. Because I have seen, people who are really, really good at what they do, let's say, and then management might say, oh, well, let's promote them up. They might, do well, but then they're not a great
Well,
leader. They don't,
and the other
yeah.
thing that I've seen a lot of in my career, because I've worked in technical organizations, is somebody's a really good scientist,
Hmm.
and so you want to give them more money and promote them. So you promote them into a leadership role, but then you don't give them the training and the support they need to actually lead.
Yes.
And so that's been kind of my mission, is making sure these people that are put into leadership roles actually have the opportunity to learn how to lead and manage.
Right. And the support and, right,
Yeah.
the resources. Well, Rob, thank you for taking us inside the world of contract pharma, from early stage molecules and clinical development to reshoring leadership and culture. For listeners who want to learn more about Olon USA, your work, or potential partnerships, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Just search for Olon USA, or search for Robert Poe, Olon USA. I'm easy to find. Or, our website is olon, USA.com.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you again for the conversation today. And to our audience, if you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, share, and tune in to our next episode of Industry Ignited. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep igniting industry.